Hello, everyone, and thank you for joining us today for this webinar featuring Dr. Cecilia Dupecher, Program Director of the Peer Review Medical Review Program. Cecilia, my thanks to you and your entire team. You've been absolutely incredible at giving our researchers every benefit you possibly could in hopes that they will do well when it comes to applying for grants under the Peer Review Medical Review Program. Today, Dr. Dupecher will tell us more about the program, the many funding opportunities, how you can apply, and the due dates. But first, I wanted to give you a little information and some history on the Peer Review Medical Review Program. Every year, the Senate determines a list of diseases and conditions that are eligible for funding. 2023 was the first year that lymphedema and lymphatic diseases were both listed. This was the result of LE&RN advocates taking dozens of meetings with senators to plead the case. The result was 5 of your grants were successful last year and realized a total of $7 million in funding. We were able to point out that breast cancer and melanoma survivors were far more likely to get lymphedema if they were in the military than otherwise. We also know that in the civilian population, up to 20% of those with breast cancer will end up with lymphedema, and up to 11% with melanoma. However, a key factor was also bringing into the discussion the burn pits in Afghanistan and Iraq, where head and neck cancers have skyrocketed as a result of being around all the toxic chemicals in those countries. Up to 70% of people with head and neck cancer will end up with lymphedema. There is also now concern that soldiers that were in proximity of the chemical weapons in Iraq have had their genetics altered, causing their children to be born with lymphatic anomalies. One thing I want to stress is that this program is a program of the Department of Defense. So as you write your grants, you need to thread the needle of demonstrating how your research will impact service personnel, their families, or veterans. This year, lymphedema, again, is one of the categories on the Peer Review Medical Review Program list of diseases eligible for research. We will continue to fight for lymphatic diseases to be on the list as well, or to have lymphatic diseases actually replace lymphedema in the future. The key is you need to apply. If you don't apply, we will be deemed a disease in which there is little interest and face being dropped from this list in the future. I've heard that the grant process can appear onerous to those used to the NIH style of writing grants. The grant is organized differently and is seen through a different lens. However, those who have applied say that they are now ready to do it again. Seek their advice, look for their help, talk to your colleagues who succeeded in securing grants last year, and check out the documents we prepared at the request of the Peer Review Medical Review Program for gaps in lymphatic research, which you can find on the LE&RN website. Good luck, and with that, I turn the proceedings over to Dr. Dupecher.
Thank you for joining us today. I am Cecilia Dupecher. I am the program manager of this peer-reviewed medical research program. It's one of 35 programs in our organization. I'm going to talk about our funding opportunities today, and I'm excited to have you all join here. With me, I have Jenny Mattard-Young. She is our PAO officer, and I also have Dr. Kathryn Argue. She is the deputy of the program. She will be here, and she will be responding to your questions in the Q&A. So please make sure to put your questions there in the Q&A as opposed to the chat. All right, so let's get started. Next slide, please, Steve. So this is going to be the overview of our talk today. I'm going to start with an overview of CDMRP. We're going to go through the program cycle and the review process. Then I'm going to get into the peer-reviewed medical research program. Like I said, it's one of 35 programs in the organization, so we're going to focus on that, where we have lymphatic diseases as a topic area. And then we're going to move on to funding opportunities in the application process, and I'm going to finalize with tips and resources for a successful application. Next slide, please. This is the vision and mission of our organization. We like to start with that. So you'll see that the vision is to transform healthcare through innovative and impactful research. And I want to emphasize the word impactful. You will hear that throughout the talk today. This is how we like to differentiate ourselves from other funding organizations. And we responsibly manage collaborative research that discovers, develops, and delivers healthcare solutions for service members, their families, veterans, and the American public. And the last sentence here is important. You can see this is part of our congressional language as well, service members, their families, veterans, and the American public. And this just means it's an all-encompassing term for military health, okay? And we'll discuss this in further slides, the importance of this for our proposals. Next slide, please. So this here is just a few of the hallmarks of the organization. I think the first thing that's important for you to see there under stewardship is that we manage targeted research funds that are added by Congress to the DoD budget. This means that we do not request these funds like other funding organizations like the NIH, for instance. These funds are added as congressional special interest dollars to the DoD budget. Okay, we different again than other funding organizations. If you have funding from us, the funds are obligated up front. So we really do not have the out-year budget commitment. So what you will see there is the direct cost limit, and it will all be obligated up front. We are an organization that stands up on grassroots advocacy. This is the reason why we exist, because of breast cancer advocates that went to the Hill to bat for more research funds. So one of the things that we're very proud of is that we integrate consumers as full participants throughout the program process as the true north of the organization. So consumers will be part of our selection process. We'll discuss that a little bit later during the presentation, but I just want to introduce the theme that consumers are really the true north of CDMRP. Next slide. We publicly announce and compete our funding opportunities. Like I said, this is congressional special interest, but it's also part of the congressional language that we do have to look at the proposals based on their scientific merit. You will see we'll have a very robust review process that's going to go through 2 levels of review that we'll discuss later. And like I mentioned at the first slide, we fund impactful, innovative research, sometimes high risk, high rewards that other research organizations are not really willing to fund. Next slide. This is a list of all our 24 appropriations. Like I said, we have 35 programs. Today, we're going to be talking about the program that's highlighted there. It's peer-reviewed medical. We receive an appropriation this year for $370 million, but we also have 42 topic areas. So different than other programs that you see here on this list, PRMRP operates under a different premise, which is the topic area, the congressionally mandated topic areas that I'll show you in further slide. But here just shows you the variety, the breadth of research that we can fund. On the right, you will see the appropriation to each one of these programs. What's important for you to understand is that all of these programs, they are standalone programs. I am the program manager of one of them. These all have different program managers, and they're all are executed independently from each other. So you will not see a funding opportunity for CDMRP. In case you're interested in any of these other programs, you will see each program releasing their own funding opportunities separately. Next slide. Now I'm going to talk a little bit about our program cycle and the review process. This is applicable to any of the programs in the organization. Next slide. Here, it just shows you a diagram of all the milestones that we have to go through once we're executing the funds, the appropriation. So we can only release our funding opportunities once we receive the appropriation. This is why we had to wait. We were under a continuing resolution for several months this year. And only after we receive an appropriation, having a bill signed into law, that we are able to release our funding opportunities. Then we will go through a process of pre-application for all proposals at CDMRP. It's going to be a two-step application submission process. There's going to be a pre-application and then a full application receipt. And then those are going to go to peer review, and the ones that have the highest scientific score are going to end up in programmatic review. On the left side of this diagram here, you will see that there's a programmatic panel right there in the middle in brown. This is a group of individuals, a board, if you will, that will advise the program. They are composed of various backgrounds of researchers, academic, industry partners. And it's important for you all, for all our programs, the list of programmatic panel membership will be listed on our website for each one of these programs. And I do encourage you to go to our website and take a look at the programmatic panel membership for this program. This really gives you an idea. You can see that they have input on several of our milestones. They have input on vision setting. That's before when we are starting to devise a strategy for next year. They have input on pre-application screening. They have input on programmatic review. That's ultimately that they're going to be doing the recommended for funding decisions. So I do encourage you to take a look at them. Then we move on. The commanding general is the authority approval for all our CDMRP awards. And then we will enter into the negotiation and the period of performance of the award in case you're notified of funding and you receive a notice of award from us. And then we have a team of science officers that will manage the entire life cycle of an award once it's made. Before I move on to the next slide, I want to show you this arrow that you see at the bottom there, the blue arrow. So there we have several milestones that we have to go through to execute the program. You will see that it's going to take several months. So this is a program that receives about 1,200 to 15 proposals yearly. It's going to take several months for us to be able to walk through all of these milestones that we have to do before we execute the funds. By law, the funds must be obligated by September 30th, 2025. So this means that even though you submit a proposal to us that has a deadline next month, it's going to take several months, all the way to December, January, for you to be notified of if you have received or not the award, and then we're going to enter the negotiation. So please add that buffer when you are planning for your timelines for submission to us. Next slide. So here talks about our two-tier review process. Like I said, our proposals are competed. So we will go through a two-tier review process. We start off with peer review. I think for scientists, everybody knows the benefits of peer review, how it works. I'm going to point out a few differences. So different than the NIH, we do not have standing panels. We don't have a Center for Scientific Review. We are appropriated yearly. So each year, and the congressional language changes each year. So we want to make sure that we can rapidly respond to that. And we solicit reviewers based on the congressional language and the topic areas that we receive that year. So we will not have a standing panel. This means that resubmission of a proposal that you submit to us previous years, even if you address some of the concerns that the reviewers have, it is not going to be reviewed by the same panel. Okay. The outcome of peer review is going to be a summary statement. It's a document that lists your strengths and the weaknesses of your proposal. You will receive that document back from us, and we do hope that that will further improve your proposal, even if you're not funded by us. The proposals that have the highest scientific score through peer review are the ones, it's a group that's going to go to programmatic review. And this is where we do our second level of review. So this, like I mentioned, we have the programmatic panel members for each one of these programs. They're listed on your website. You can go there. And these are the individuals that are now going to be doing a comparative review of the proposal. So of everything that we received, the ones that had the highest scientific score, which ones are the ones that meet the adherence of the award mechanism, that are meeting program relevance and the impact. So this means that we do not have a funding line, or a pay line. Not necessarily the ones that have the highest scientific score are the ones that are ultimately going to be recommended for funding. So we do have a two-tier review process to make sure that we're also meeting the intent of the program that we put forth. All our the intent, everything that we want will be listed in the program announcement. So we will go through that in further slides, and I will explain that in detail. Next slide, please. Like I mentioned at the beginning of the presentation, our consumers, which are defined as patients living with the disease and the condition, sometimes they're caretakers, they are the true north of of our organization. They are really, this organization stands on grassroots advocacy. Like I said, we started off because of individuals that went to the Hill and wanted new research funds because they weren't really happy with the way that research was managed. So it is a part of our execution, and it's our pride to partner with these individuals individuals and make sure that we are soliciting for research that actually impacts the patients living with the disease and the condition. This means that several parts of your proposal, when you submit a proposal to us, is going to request there are going to be attachments that are going to be clearly listed, that it's for lay language, and please make sure that you do understand the audience that's going to be evaluating your proposal. The consumer reviewers, they have an equal vote at CDMRP, the same way that a scientist reviewer, and we will mark that in our funding opportunities. That's very well clearly identified which parts of your proposals are going to be reviewed by our consumer reviewer, and the importance of using a very impactful lay language to describe those attachments. Next slide. So now I'm going to talk about the peer-reviewed medical. Like I said, this is one of the 35 programs that was on that initial table that I showed you. Next slide, please. So different than other programs in the organization, we do not have a very prescriptive congressional language. Our congressional language is very broad. Our directive from Congress is to support research of clear scientific merit and direct relevance to military health in specified topic areas. So what does that mean? Next slide, please. So each year with the year's appropriation, you will see that we receive a list of topic areas that can be used to be funded with that year's appropriation. So you will see there this year we received 42 topic areas. These vary. CDMRP has no input on these congressionally mandated topic areas. Like I said, these are congressionally directed. We will only devise an execution strategy for these topic areas. But the list, how it comes and how it changes from year to year, it's not something that CDMRP has an input on. You will see there lymphedema listed as an eligible topic area this year. I think that this is the focus and interest of this webinar. And you will see there 4 new topic areas highlighted in blue. These are new topic areas that have never been assigned to the program in previous years. Next slide. So to execute the program, we allocate these topic areas in portfolios. These are buckets, if you will, that align with the major areas of scientific research. This allows us to set the priorities at this portfolio level that you see there. So we will be soliciting, requesting the research based on the commonalities of these topic areas amongst themselves. Lymphedema is listed as part of an internal medicine portfolio. This will be important when you see a proposal, when you see our funding opportunities, you're going to have to choose your portfolio, your topic areas. So that's part of the internal medicine portfolio. Next slide, please. So like I said, we can set the priorities for what it is that we want, what type of research is needed that year, what we are looking for at the portfolio level. You will see in our funding opportunities for all these portfolios, we will have a list of strategic goals, which is what we call, which set the direction for the portfolio, the long-term direction, where we see this portfolio going in the next 5 years, and they all span across the continuum of care. So we're gonna have goals for foundational prevention, diagnosis, treatment, and epidemiology. These goals, they are devised in coordination with key stakeholders, with MRDC leaders, with our other government counterparts. But the important thing is that the advocacy group, all the individuals, patients living with this disease and the condition, everybody was able to put their voice and say what was needed for the research under this specific topic area. So by law, the way that the program operates, the applications, they must address at least one topic area and one strategic goal for them to be eligible for funding. This means here that platforms that are applicable to many diseases and conditions, we welcome them, but you will, when you're drafting your proposal, you will need to hone it down. You will need to make sure that you're focusing on and aligning to a specific disease and condition. Next slide. So for all the portfolios, how do we execute our funds? We release these funding opportunities. This year, we're releasing 6 funding opportunities. I'm going to talk into greater detail about them. I just wanted to show you on this slide that for all the portfolios that you saw listed on the previous slide, we will have 6 funding opportunities, 2 of them under basic research, 2 under translational, and 2 types of funding opportunities under clinical trial. And we will go into a further detail about them. Next slide. So for all proposals, like I said, you will receive, you're going to open a funding opportunity, and you're going to see the first thing listed is you're going to have some introduction to the program. Then it's going to be the intent of the award mechanisms. And part of the application requirement is for you to find your portfolio and strategic goals. Here I have, just for the sake of for you to have it at your fingertips, we're going to share these slides with you. But this is also listed in the funding opportunity, the strategic goals for the internal medicine portfolio, because like I said, this is where lymphedema is located. So you're going to see what we're looking for research under foundational prevention diagnosis. Next slide. Is going to be a continuation for treatment and epidemiology. So this is really meant to be used as a mix and match. If you have other areas that you also work on, that your research is applicable and eligible, you can use this as mix and match. These goals are broad. They are broad for a reason. They're not just restricting to one specific topic area. You can choose a topic area, choose a strategic goal, and then it's going to be part of your homework and your proposal to tell us how your research is going to address these two components. Next slide. Again, as a requirement, this is a funding organization that aligns under the DoD. So talking about the relevance and impact for military health system is very important. For all proposals under PRMRP, we're going to have an attachment that's going to require you to talk about the military health impact of it. There are some diseases and conditions under our portfolio, under these 42 topic areas, that they are much more applicable to active duty service members. There are some other diseases and conditions that align better with beneficiaries. Either way, it is going to be part of the applicant's homework and duty to describe how that is important, and how that aligns to military health system, knowing that that is a very broad term. So it's not only for direct relevance to, like I said, to active duty service members, to the battlefield, but also to military readiness, right? So if you have beneficiaries that are committed with diseases and conditions, how that affects also military readiness. I will say this is where I direct researchers to go to the advocacy groups. The advocacy groups, they were able to get these topic areas under the DoD. They have very robust and complete justifications of why this should be under the DoD and how this aligns to military health. And I think that that's a good connection for you to have, and ask them to help you draft or provide you some material for you to draft that statement. Next slide. So here is just a further breakdown of the award mechanisms that we have. I mentioned on the previous slide, we released 6 funding opportunities this year. These are eligible for all 42 topic areas, for all of them, for all the portfolios that we have. And I'm going to go through each one individually, in broad strokes, give you what it is, the difference between them. So under basic research, we start off with the Discovery Award. This is a high risk, high reward funding mechanism. We are going to look here to be giving some feeds funding, some seed funding, $270K. It's the maximum direct cost limit, but we're looking here for that game-changing idea, that breakthrough, that high risk, high reward, and you don't have to be necessarily in the field to be eligible for this. It is just that completely, to put it this way, we are comfortable with the risk of this project failing. It is just something, and we are looking here for that very innovative, out of the box thinking, and innovation is going to be the most important review criteria for this award mechanism. Then we move on to the Investigator-Initiated Research Award. This is still under the realm of basic research. We're looking here for preclinical studies, expansions, replications, comparative studies, validation studies, all based on animal work, cell line work. So this is the direct cost limit for this is going to be $1 million. Then we move on to our translational, a little bit more advanced award mechanisms. This year, this is a brand new mechanism that we did. It's called the Impact Award. The focus here, we're looking for that use-inspired science, the translatability of what it is that you're working. So here we're off the realm of basic research. We're, again, like I said, looking at translational research. So we are going to ask you, what is the near-term impact of this? We are looking for maximum impact in the maximum of 5 years. So the short-term impact is going to be it's going to need to be very well described, and it's going to be the major peer review criteria for it. The direct cost limit for that is $2 million. You will be able to come in a partnering option with somebody from a different field, and then the direct cost limit is going to be 2.6. We move on to the translation to Technology Therapeutic Development Award. The short for that is TTDA. This is now a product-driven award mechanism. The expectations, we can do GMC, GLP, manufacturing as well. We can do toxicology studies, all IND enabling studies. And the expectation is that by the end of the period of performance, you would be ready to submit an IND or an IDE to the FDA. Then we finalize with our clinical trials. We have two options here. We have the first one. This is an award mechanism that we released for the first time last year. It was very well received by the community. It's called Lifestyle Behavioral Health Intervention Research Award. The direct cost limit for that is 3. And here we're basically looking at for that clinical research that's focused on non-pharmacological therapies. We're looking for something that's not FDA regulated, like apps and other quality of life and patient outcome focused research. Okay, and then we finalize with our classical clinical trial. Our clinical trial does not have a direct cost limit. You can come in and put the maximum whatever budget you feel that's needed for you to conduct that clinical trial. This is a very competitive award mechanism for PRMRP. We are known to fund large clinical trials, and we have two options under this clinical trial. You can apply for a clinical trial with planning phase, where you would come in and we would give you $500K for you to finalize your regulatory approvals. And then by the end of 12 months, you would have to be ready to start your trial, and that would be funded as an option, meaning that if you do not meet the milestones that you said that we all set forth on this planning phase, you will not receive the trial option for that. Or you can come in with a full-blown clinical trial, a prepared clinical trial that you already have your IND for the clinical purpose that you're using that the intervention. Like I mentioned on a previous slide, I know that this is a lot of information. Like I said, this is for each one of these, you're going to have a different funding opportunity. I'm going to show you where to find them on our website. But for all of CDMRP's funding opportunities, it's going to be a two-step process. So we're going to ask you to either to do a letter of intent or to do a pre-proposal. So there's a difference between them. For these first 5 award mechanisms of basic research, translational, and the LE&RN, you're going to be requested to submit a letter of intent. A letter of intent is, as it says, only it's just a letter of intent. You're going to submit us 1 paragraph telling us what is it that you're going to submit for. Now, even though this is an administrative step for us, with this, we're going to start planning and putting together our review panel. It is not optional. You will have to submit a letter of intent. If you do not submit a letter of intent, your full proposal, which will be due several weeks later, will not be eligible. We will not be able to do that. And then for the clinical trial, we are going to be soliciting a pre-proposal that really helps us, a pre-application. That this is a very elaborate award mechanism. There's going to be several attachments. We want to make sure that we first ask for a pre-submission so we can take a look. It's going to be 5 pages. This is going to be peer-reviewed, and it's going to ultimately give you a letter of invitation to submit the full proposal or not. And this is just to make sure that we are not putting extra burden on the PI. So we will only invite those that we actually have an intent or an interest in looking further in funding. Next slide. So this is what our funding opportunity looks like. I just wanted to point out a few important things on it. You will see here, let's start. This is the front page of the clinical trial award mechanism. There are going to be some important dates there. It's going to list there. The first one, when is the due date, the submission deadline for your pre-application, and then when you would end up receiving your invitation to submit. Again, this is the only mechanism that has this, that's going to be peer reviewing your pre-application. And then we're going to show you when we're going to do the peer review and programmatic review. The also that you see on the right side there, you're going to see that there's going to be a section with the award information that's going to clearly describe the intent. There are several researchers that they don't know if their awards should go under investigator initiated or more translational. This is clearly specified in our funding opportunity. So unlike the NIH, we do not work with the performer to tailor their proposals to our funding mechanisms. We cannot provide a competitive advantage to any performer. So we make sure that all the information is listed there. And then the other thing that I want to point out, we are going to list the review criteria, how all the bullet points that you are going to be evaluated against. So what does that look like? Next slide. So this is an example of the peer review criteria. Like I said, there's going to be a list of headers and bullet points. You're going to be evaluated based on impact, innovation, research strategy, feasibility, and it's going to be listed in decreasing order of importance. This is important. Each one of the award mechanisms that I told you earlier, they are going to have their own set of review criteria. Some are going to favor innovation over impact. Some are going to favor research strategy and feasibility over innovation. So that's very important that you go through this very carefully and understand that. I will say that one of the advice that I give to anybody that's submitting a proposal to us, this is what the peer reviewers are going to receive. So when they are doing a peer review, they are going to go one by one on these bullet points. So make sure you, before you submit a proposal to us, ask a colleague to read, make sure that you're hitting the mark and you're really elaborating on each one of these bullet points. Next slide. Like I said, we have a two-tier review process. So now we're going to go to the programmatic review. The programmatic reviewers, the criteria that they use to evaluate your proposal is also going to be listed here. What's important is that it's all going to be relative, right? So before your proposal was evaluated, it was being evaluated independently and having a score at the end here. Now we're going to be looking at comparatively. So with a group of proposals. So it's really kind of difficult to elaborate how that's going to happen, but it is listed how the programmatic reviewers, what it is that they are going to be evaluating against. Like I mentioned, I think it's always helpful for you to go take a look at the individuals. They're listed on our website. Familiarize yourself with the individuals that are going to be making the comparative review of your proposals. Next slide. So this is a table that just summarizes our deadlines for FY24. You will see there the 5 award mechanisms that require an LOI. This is fast approaching. You will need to submit an LOI by May 6th or May 13th. And like I said, an LOI is a one-pager, but this step is not optional. If you do not have this step, you will not be able to go on to submit the full application by May 23rd or June 6th. The clinical trial award, we're going to require a pre-proposal, so you have until May 13th to put together that pre-proposal. You will receive an invitation to submit or not by June 17th, and then the full application is going to be due August 19th. Next slide. So again, this just summarizes what we were talking about, the two-step submission process. You're going to see there's a third step there. We allow you to have a verification application period in EBRAP. So once you submit your proposal with us, so all the pre-applications, they must go through EBRAP. I'm sure that a lot of you are familiar with EBRAP at this point. We have done this in the last year, but you're going to submit your pre-application through EBRAP. And then if it's a pre-proposal, you're going to have an invitation to submit. Then we submit the full proposal. That's going to be through grants.gov. If you're an intramural participant, which I don't suspect there are many here, it's going to be, you can also submit your full proposal through EBRAP. But after that, one thing that I want to highlight here is there's going to be a lot of steps that's going to be needed from your business official. So please make sure to add that extra time, that buffer in your timeline for submission with us. And after you submit your proposal, there's going to be a verification application period in EBRAP. That's going to be a window of 3 to 5 days that you have to make sure that all your documents are in after the deadline has passed. Keeping in mind, please, that this verification period, you will not be able to change your budget or your narrative. So it's really just a little buffer for you to make sure that everything is there and that you have everything that you need from your business office. Next slide. So now I'm going to close off sharing some tips and resources and going through a few things that we have on our website to make it a smoother application process. Next slide. So if I leave you with one thing from today's talk, which I know I talk fast, I talked a lot, it is read the announcement carefully. Okay. Like I said, this goes through several levels of review in the DoD. It goes through ethics, it goes through legal. We want to make sure that the information for a successful proposal is in there. These funding opportunities, they're long, they're lengthy, they're long and lengthy for a reason. It's exactly because we cannot interact. Once we have funding opportunities open, we can't interact with performer to help tailor their proposal. So I do encourage you to really take a look at the program announcement, read it once, read it again, make sure that you have everything, make sure that that you understand the intent of the award mechanism, the review criteria, and you focus also on the deadlines, like I have summarized it in the table above. Next slide. Like I said, like we talked about, I think making sure this is not a funny organization like any other funny organization. If you just repackage your NIH proposal, it's not going to be very successful to us. Here we are looking for relevance and impact and innovation. This is probably going to be one of the highest review criteria on many of the proposals for PRM. So we really want to know, how are you making a difference? How are you impacting the patients living with the disease and the condition? We do not fund research for the sake of research. We do understand that the state of science of many of these diseases are still on very basic, but we are not looking here for funding research for the sake of research, right? So the impact, the translatability is really going to have to come across. Next slide. Planning and timelines. I will say this is very important as well. Absent a great disaster of nature, a hurricane, an earthquake, we do not provide a grace period. This is different than other funding organizations. I know that several of you are aware that the NIH provides you grace periods. There are other government funders that do have a grace period that's always announced, so it becomes expected. For the DoD, that does not happen. If you submit every year, we have phenomenal proposals that come in a minute late. There's nothing we can do to bypass the system and accept them, okay? So please make sure that your timelines and your deadlines are very clear from the beginning, and you allow the buffer needed to go through. I think everybody's going to have technical difficulties. I have technical difficulties even to log into Zoom. So allow that buffer for you to submit your proposal. Don't leave for submission for the last minute. And then ultimately, grantsmanship, I think it goes a long way. There are several things that we're soliciting for. There are several different peer review criteria. So making sure that you're hitting the mark on what it is that we want. So not only repackage a proposal that you have already done in previous years, but make sure that you're hitting the mark with everything that we need. That's clear, that's unburdened by jargon, especially the sections that are going to be reviewed by our consumer reviewers. Next slide. Here is here's the landing page for the peer-reviewed medical. There's several good information that you can see there. You will see a program book that lists all our portfolios, the things that we have gotten from it. You're going to see the list of topic areas. You can see also a link to our funding opportunities and the programmatic panel. So this is just to give you an overview of the landing page of the peer-reviewed medical program. Next slide. You can always subscribe to our different newsletters. So this is the landing page of CDMRP website. You will see that mail icon. We encourage you to sign up for listserv. There's going to be a drop-down box that's going to ask you for which other programs. So if you saw other programs here that are of interest to you, that can be applicable to other areas of your research or your colleagues, you can just choose the drop-down box and you will start receiving newsletter for each one of the programs that you click. Next slide. And we also do have a webinar series on our website that is not just specific for the funding opportunities that I was talking about today, but also several other funding opportunities, how to, for instance, be successful in team science funding, high risk, high gain funding opportunities. So it's just a different way of repackaging the information that I gave you here today, that if you're interested, I do think you will find some nuggets of information that are going to be very helpful for a successful proposal submission. Next slide. And I will pause here. I am happy to take any questions that you didn't put in the Q&A. Kathryn has been monitoring the Q&A. Kathryn, is there anything that we need to address?
Yeah, so one came in asking if the same investigator can submit multiple proposals, but to different mechanisms. So I thought that would be good for you to explain.
Yes, so each investigator, you can submit one proposal for each one of the mechanisms, but just one proposal. I will share this. I think it's entertaining. We had a researcher a few years ago that submitted 25 proposals to the program. That's not allowed. So you can submit one for each one of the award mechanisms.
All right, we have a question of whether preliminary data is required for the discovery award mechanism.
No, it is not required. It is not required. And it's actually, it's not allowed for you to submit preliminary data for the discovery award. It is discouraged.
All right, we have a question about whether or not postdocs are eligible.
Postdocs would be eligible for the discovery award. That's where the eligibility would apply. For the rest, you need to be at a assistant professor level and above. Well, I really appreciate it. And if you have any questions, you can feel free to send to Phyllis and to Steve, and they will send it to me after. And I'm looking forward to receiving many outstanding proposals in lymphedema this year. So thank you, everyone.
Thank you.